Identity to me is something that's practical. It's your identity is it's like a dramatic role that you play out in the world. And while playing that out, it has to furnish you with a life. And what that means is that it has to be negotiated with other people. And when you're a very young child and you first start to play with who you are, you live in a fantasy world. And according to some developmental psychologists, at least, particularly this is grounded in the theories of Piaget, that very young children, 2 or 3, are quite egocentric in their play. They play according to their own rules. And so they're not social yet until they're 3 or 4, which means that they have their own goals in mind, and then they erect a little fictional world around those goals, and then they play out the role within that fictional world, and that's pretend play. And when they get to be about 3 or 4, and they start playing with other kids, they have to bring their worlds together and negotiate, because both children have to want to play. And so that means identity has to expand beyond its egocentric focus and increasingly be negotiated in the social world. I studied developmental psychology for a long time, especially in relationship to the regulation of aggression. And most children learn to regulate their aggression between the ages of 2 and 4. For example, for instance, there's a subset of children, mostly male, who are very aggressive at the age of 2, comparatively speaking. They bite, kick, fight, hit, and steal. That's the definition of aggressive. And almost all those children are socialized out of that by the time they're 4, although a small proportion aren't, and they tend to be long-term antisocial children and then criminal adults. It's very, very difficult for that to be rectified if it isn't rectified by 4. What happens with most children is they learn to move beyond their egocentric presuppositions and include other children in the play. And so they start to negotiate their roles. And a sophisticated identity is a negotiated role with everyone. And of course, this is the case, because well, first of all, if you're a child and you want friends, then you can't insist that only your game be played. So I'll give you an example. There's been observational studies of children in playgrounds. So imagine there's a group of children together, let's say they're 6 or 7 years old, and they're playing helicopter. So they've got their erasers out and they're buzzing around in the helicopters. Okay, so they've already established the ground rules. They've got together and they laid out the drama. And they say, well, let's play helicopter. And maybe there's 4 or 5 suggestions, but the group develops a consensus that helicopter's the fun game. And let's make our erasers into helicopters. I don't have an eraser. Well, you can use your pencil and it can be a long helicopter. And so everybody gets a roll and everybody's happy about it. Otherwise, play won't continue, right? Everybody has to be happy or play won't continue. And so then the little drama organizes itself and the kids play helicopter, and there's consequences of that play out like a story. And then maybe another kid comes along and he's got an eraser and a pencil in his bag and he wants to play helicopter too. And if he's a socially sophisticated kid, he'll hang around the outside of the little game and watch. And then he'll take out his eraser and maybe start making buzzing noises with it. And when he can see that there's an opening in the play situation, he'll swoop in and maybe he'll get integrated. It's like when you're at a cocktail party and you hear a conversation and you're hovering around the edge. You wait for an opening and then you say something that's germane to the topic. And if you're sophisticated enough and the people are friendly enough, then it'll open and you'll be allowed in. Now, even popular kids often get rebuffed when they try to enter an already structured game. Unpopular kids don't watch what's going on, and then they come along and try to impose their game on the entire group, and then they have a tantrum if they don't get let in. And so that's a good example of how identity is negotiated at the earliest stages.